two questions. One, I'm just glancing at, that was a huge point that you made to me, the difference between
Speak just a little bit louder, please.
Genesis 1 and Genesis 2. I mean, that was huge to me to look at, so I'm just glancing at it. But what's the possibility of seedlings or seeds being planted on the ground? I mean, all they need is water. They don't need anything else. The seed has everything it needs. It has the food and the embryo. And then my second question is, what do you believe that the effects of the flood had on the earth, as far as when you look at the old earth and what the scientists are finding with the effects of the flood? Because we had, obviously, people living to 900 years old. Then jumping ahead, I looked, Sarah died at 127, Abraham at 175. So it obviously had a huge effect, I would believe, on our earth and our atmosphere.
Okay, can you state your first question again?
My first question about the seeds, I mean, could it have just been that there were seedlings and seeds in the garden that were being watered from underneath and not yet grown? We know if a forest has, fire wipes it out, there can be seeds in the ground that then later regrow the forest.
Yeah, let the earth bring forth vegetation
Sure.
according to their kinds.
And it could have been seedlings or small when we're reading in chapter 1 that said came forth, and then it would coincide with what chapter 2 would say.
Chapter 2 seems to require the idea that the greening of the earth was not instantaneous. I think the traditional Christian reading of day 3 is that, the earth was instantaneously green. Chapter 2 does require a revision of that view. So, the seeds slowly growing according to their nature, perfectly fine with me. So God slowly greening the earth by natural process. That is, I think, what happened. Okay, now about the ages of the race in regard to the flood. It seems to me that when God makes the human race, and we are directly from the hand of our Creator, we are made with enormous strength. Strength of body, strength of mind, more than humans today. And that the ravages of sin, rather than the ravages of the flood, are the key issue in the diminution of human age and human strength. So Abraham lives to be, 175, Jacob 130 something, Joseph dies at 110, Joshua dies at 110. And Moses says, how old does man get? Well, it's 70 years, or maybe if he's strong, 80, but it's trouble and sorrow. That's Psalm 90, reflecting on human frailty. So I think that it's the ravages of sin, rather than a chemical change in the atmosphere rendered by the flood. That's the ravaging upon our being. So sin has both an effect upon our character, our soul, and an effect upon our body. So we are weaker than Adam was when he came forth from the hand of his Creator. I'm not willing to say that the flood caused a massive change in the laws of physics. Now, the young earth creationists often have the theory that there was a vapor canopy that surrounded the earth and that kept the whole planet in a kind of tropical or semi-tropical paradise. The vapor canopy idea. No text actually says this. Now, Genesis 2 verse 6 does say that it had not yet rained. And in the young earth view, the interpretation becomes that it did not rain until the flood. No text says that. That's an interpretation. Now, I've done lots of interpreting today, so I'm not going to argue against the fact or the necessity of interpretations. We have to understand what we read. But it is an interpretation that makes this canopy effect. And for that canopy idea to hold, the laws of physics regarding vapor and surface tension would have to be different. There would have to have been a systematic change in the laws of physics. No text says that. I would rather relate the shortening of human life to the impact of sin than to the impact of the flood. Now, I believe there was a great flood. I believe the whole human race was destroyed. The text requires that view. The text is infallible, the text is correct. But I'm less favorable about the flood geology that's been proposed by young Earth creationists. So I have a lot of hesitancy over many of those claims. Now, I'm not a hydraulic geologist. I'm not, I'm not a physicist. I'm not a scientist. So there are many things that some of these people claim that I cannot evaluate fairly. But the theological claims I can evaluate, and they seem to be a supposition based upon a supposition based upon a supposition. If the first is 50% true, and the second one is 50% of that, and the third one is 50% of that, you see what I mean? So I am reluctant to assert the flood geology. Can we take one more question? Over here.
Yes, I was a little, when you were talking about the young Earth creation position, a day on 24 hours, I've read minimal young Earth creation literature from recent years, nothing from the past, maybe you know. I was wondering if maybe that was a little outdated, because what I had read about what young Earth creationists are currently saying is that whenever the word day, young Hebrew, is used with a number, you can tell from the context that means a literal 24-hour day. Outside of Genesis 1 and Genesis 2, when that happens, you really tell from the context this means a 24-hour day. So then they say, well, that must be what it means in the creation account. That's what I've heard. You didn't mention that. Maybe you were just pressed for time, but I was wondering if you...
Yeah, I've also read that, maybe the same article who wrote it. For instance, in the collection of offerings, is it for the tabernacle or is it for the temple? I forget now. There's a reference to offerings being brought on subsequent days, one after another, first day, second day, third day. Obviously, those are ordinary days. But in a certain way, this begs the question. Genesis 1 is the foundational story. So does context require that there are extraordinary elements to that foundational story? In the gathering of offerings for Solomon's temple or Moses' tabernacle, okay, history's been going on for a while. So when you argue from context, that argument can be turned around against that view, because Genesis 1 is the foundational story. Aren't foundations often unique? Context. One more question, and I think we're done for the night. Over here, sir.